Is that your new 4S you're using?
No, this is the iTouch.
Oh, I see, yeah.
I have the 4S is in
Because we both
reserve.
just got 4S's written.
The 4S is for the meeting itself, so.
You're saving your battery for...
Saving the battery.
You're prioritizing.
Well, I'm sitting here with David Skorton and Cathy from Cornell University, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about their plans for the new Roosevelt Island campus.
Rick, it's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Rick.
Cathy and I have met before. Let's start at the beginning. Why did Cornell get interested in the entire project of the New York City Applied Science School? And why did you choose Roosevelt Island as the location for the campus?
What if I take the first part and you can take the second part? This is a really important question because it goes into the sort of fabric that Cornell is made of. We're the only private university in the country that does the whole land grant mission for the state. And so in every one of the 57 upstate counties and in all 5 boroughs in the city, for generations we've been doing what people call extension work, which is taking the fruits of research and teaching from the campus and applying it for the good of people. These things started out mainly as agricultural kinds of projects in rural areas, but pretty soon it spread to whatever people needed. And so number one, and there's only 2, number one is that whenever a project comes up where we can leverage the things that we do already through an investment by another partner, and we can go ahead and serve the people in some new way, our ears always perk up. That's one. And the second one is that Cornell is a science and technology powerhouse, one of the very most highly ranked institutions in the world. In a lot of these fields that Mayor Bloomberg is concerned about increasing the talent pool in this fabulous city: electrical engineering, computer science, materials science, nanotechnology, all those kinds of things. And so this felt like a fit to me, a fit because we already serve the people of New York City in multiple footprints around the city. We already are doing a lot of these things related to science and tech education, some of the finest graduate programs. And so to put those things together at a chance where we have a sort of a blank slate, working with the administration of the city and with a lot of other people of goodwill, just seemed terrific to me and seemed to fit the fabric of Cornell.
And why you choose Roosevelt Island as opposed to other neighborhoods of New York City which are more technology, or at least are known as more technology-oriented neighborhoods?
Please.
Take a start. I can't think of a better site for this campus in Roosevelt Island. I was just thinking back, I think it was just about a year ago when the city offered a tour of, I believe it was 5 sites to locate this campus. And we went to a number of sites, and they were all beautiful sites with a lot of potential. And we stepped onto Roosevelt Island, and our entire team said, this is it. Aside from the obvious, it's just a spectacular place. You're a stone's throw from Manhattan, but yet you have a place to really develop a significant presence in a focused academic institution. What was really important to us is that we think about the linkages within the city. So we have really focused on the F quarter, for example. I believe that in the future, the F quarter is going to be the tech quarter for New York City. It's already started.
The F train car.
Absolutely. So you think about it. It starts in Dumbo, high tech, goes through Union Square, comes up through Manhattan. Now we look at Roosevelt Island as being kind of the centerpiece of this jewel. And then you move into Queens. And so as we started thinking about what would our strategy be to really build an effective campus, Queens also plays an incredibly important part in the future. We think this is going to be a great landing spot for potential entrepreneurs. So it had all the elements, you know, the connectivity, but also kind of this special environment that really is going to gel, you know, all the teaching and the learning that's going to happen here in the research.
I might just add, Rick, just one more thing. Cathy's covered 99% of it. The only 1% I would add is that we're already in the neighborhood. We're already in the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
In our Weill Cornell Medical College, where we have 4,000 or 5,000 employees, stone's throw from here. And I'm a doc. My primary appointment is in the departments of medicine and pediatrics at the medical college, so I'm there quite a bit. And my wife is a professor at the medical college. And some of the folks who work in her lab live on Roosevelt Island. So we look at it, we know about it, we understand the proximity to these exciting growth and development areas in New York City. And so in addition to all the things that Cathy said by comparison to other sites, this sort of feels like our neighborhood.
Can you describe a little bit how you see the campus evolving over the next 4 or 5 years in terms of your first-year demolition of the Goldwater Hospital, then the construction, and then the first building in 2017 and the arrival of students? What's the process going to be?
Well, just the way you laid it out is the high-level view, and you know, presidents are only allowed to give the high-level view. And when you want facts so that they don't get messed up, you always go to the people actually doing it. So the high-level view, I agree with what you said. And now for the facts, Cathy Dove.
So one of the things we're going to talk about, Rick, in the town meeting tonight is how important planning is to this whole process. So that's really what we've engaged in a pretty significant way, getting the planning right and really listening and reflecting our needs, community needs, what we want this thing to look at. That's a significant part of it, and we need to do that right. So that's what's going on now. We will actually take possession of the site at the end of 2013. In 2014, that's when the hospital will be demolished, and then we'll start construction after that's complete. And as you said, then we would open our doors in 2017. In the interim, we are getting temporary space. And we're going to actually get our campus up and running in temporary space on a much more modest scale, of course. But you know, we're excited. We're going to get students and faculty. We're already talking about hiring faculty and enrolling students starting in 2013. So there's going to be a fair amount of activity in Manhattan prior to moving on to Roosevelt Island in 2017. So all these things are going on concurrently.
And if your readers and your listeners and watchers want to get some idea of how this thing is going and what it's going to look like years before there's a footprint on Roosevelt Island, watching the activity that Cathy and Dan and our leaders are planning in this temporary space will be a really good indication. You will see graduate students working toward their degrees. You will see research going on. You'll see interactions with the corporate world starting right away. And the interactions that are just talking in nature have been going on intensively since December 19th of last year. But the actual interactions that, as Cathy said, in a small scale will be a clue to what it would be like on a big scale in Roosevelt Island are going to start within about a year.
It's been so gratifying because we've had so many extraordinary potential faculty and companies that want to work with reaching out to us already saying, when can we start this thing up? So we're not waiting for the physical plant to open, so to speak.
Can you provide any specific names of companies and professors?
No,
but this was a very good try.
Exactly.
Very good.
Not until we're there.
I'm told that often, but I have to try.
Good question.
That was really good. And the way you got it in there was great.
Okay. And where is the temporary campus going to be in Manhattan?
Soon to be announced.
Soon to be announced.
Yes, we have a few really good sites. It's safe to say that it will be south of 42nd Street and in the tech corridor, the existing tech corridor.
And we'll be able to tell the world about that, we hope, within, when would you say, a month?
I would hope in a month. We're very close.
And you'll be able to then have a class entering in the fall of 2013?
So accreditation is an important part of what we're doing right now. Thankfully, because we're a New York State institution, we can bring small groups of students onto the campus to start some of their education. And this fall, we'll bring some Ithaca-based students in for project work, that kind of thing. And in 2013, we fully expect to have a class enrolled.
So I want to reemphasize that because one of the advantages that I felt we brought to this competition, which was a really stiff, difficult worldwide competition, was just what Cathy said, and that is that this is a New York institution already doing the laundry every day, so to speak, getting the wash out. And to say it again, this fall the leaders expect to have some Ithaca-based students doing projects down here in Manhattan, and next year the first matriculants would come. And now the remainder of the management team. I'm here as a placeholder. Dan Huttenlocher, who's the Vice Provost and founding Dean of the campus, and Ken Fuchs, who is the Chief Academic Officer of Cornell, the Provost. And the deans throughout our Ithaca campus report to Kent, and it's his responsibility to make this a terrific thing a success. Rick has been throwing us the pop flies, and the line drives are coming our way pretty soon.
Well, welcome to Roosevelt Island to both of you gentlemen. Getting back to the plans for the campus, can you describe at all how tall you think the buildings will be, how many students you're expected to have in the beginning of the program, the access to the campus on the part of the Roosevelt Island residents, whether it'll be a closed campus, whether it'll be an open campus, and just how you see the campus interacting with the existing and future community of Roosevelt Island.
Once again, I'll give you the high-level generalities, and then Cathy and Dan will give you the real facts. But eventually, when it's fully built out, sometime in the future, a couple of decades from now, when it's totally built out, as we mentioned, we expect to have 2,000 or so students and 300 or so faculty. Obviously, it's going to start in a much more modest way. And the pace at which that will go is pretty hard to predict with precision, but it's going to start, as Cathy mentioned earlier, with a few Ithaca-based students coming down this fall and then some matriculants next year. But Cathy, I wonder if you could tell a little bit about the physical plans,
Sure.
and perhaps Dan could comment on the size of the classes.
So, Rick, as I mentioned, we're going through a pretty intense planning process right now, and so we don't know. We're still formulating that. It's a really exciting process, but it's critically important. So we're balancing all the different attributes of how do we take advantage of the site, really respect the site, which helps to shape buildings over time. So as far as things like height and footprint and stuff, that's still all being worked out, and we'll have lots of exciting plans to share as that moves forward in the next few months. As far as size and population and scope goes, well, first of all, let me say that it will be an open campus, no question. So that's one of our fundamental principles. And so one of the things we are weighing is how do we make this very accessible and exciting to the community, and make sure it's a place that attracts the community, especially with the Four Freedoms Park opening up. I mean, it's just hopefully going to be a natural location that people want to flock to. As far as population goes, when we move on the site in 2017, we expect to have several hundred students, and over time that will grow to several thousand. And I'll remind you that this is a graduate campus, so these will be graduate students, a combination of master's degree students and PhDs. Did I get it all?
You covered the student population, which was
Do you expect the students to be living on campus, or do you think that they will live in the existing or future housing that will be built on Roosevelt Island?
So a big part of our vision right now is that we will provide housing on campus. So that's very much part of our planning process. It won't be for 100% of the population, but it probably be, in addition to students, would be for some of the staff and the faculty also to give them an option to live on campus. So it will be just for a proportion of it, but we think it's important to be able to provide that to the people working on and learning and teaching on the campus.
I want to just underscore something that Cathy already said, but just to emphasize it. If I were living on Roosevelt Island and saw this new thing coming up, and it's you don't know exactly what it's going to be like, that issue of an open or closed campus would loom large to me. And I want to just underscore what Cathy said. What she said was our tradition, or our way of doing things in Cornell for generations has been to have an open campus. I'll just give you one very simple example. Last weekend in Ithaca, there were the first foot races of the season. And there was a half marathon and a 10K. And one of the folks who lives in town in Ithaca, not associated with the university, who was waiting for his daughter to come in from the 10K, thanked me for making it possible for them to use Cornell property to do this, to open up one of our buildings to have refreshments and places people could hang out a little bit, rest. It was a windy, sort of a crummy day. And that's the sort of tradition that Cathy's talking about. Cornell's the sort of place that wants to see itself as of the community, and the community being of the campus. Not every school is that way, but just the way Cathy described it is really important. It's not just rhetoric we're telling you, it's the way we've operated for a long time.
So it's part of our design, but it's actually more than just the ability to migrate through the campus. So part of what our programmatic planning is how do we actually attract people to the campus, whether it be for workshops or interactivity. I mean, there's just a huge potential here. One of the things I didn't mention when you said why Roosevelt Island. Roosevelt Island has this tremendous tradition I'm just learning about for being a little entrepreneurial and a little bit ahead of the game with technology and rolling out new innovative ideas. It's a hub of innovation already. And so it's that permeable line between the campus and the community in both directions that really is going to make this thing thrive.
Yeah, Roosevelt Island is one of the first communities to use the see-click-fix reporting system. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. It's just a way, it's an online way for community residents to communicate with the government REOC, to tell them that certain problems exist on
I
Roosevelt
didn't know
Island.
that was what it was called.
Fix,
but I'm
fix the
aware of it.
pothole, or the light is out,
Yep.
so it's an interactive way.
That's fantastic.
So
That's great.
it was one of the first communities to do that.
Don't you have
And
any tough questions for Kent over there? I mean, it would be really great to see you sweating. I'd
Could you
like to
t-
see that.
Could you talk a little bit about the transportation infrastructure that will probably need to be improved on Roosevelt Island with the influx of
what I'm
Cornell
talking
University?
That is a tough question.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Remember, as Cathy said, many of the faculty, staff, and students will actually be here, employed here. So we are, as part of the land use process, looking at parking for a number of those, but not all of those individuals. And we're very, very understanding and eager to work with the community around transportation. But as Cathy said, we're in the planning process, so we have nothing specific to report, but we're committed to making sure transportation works effectively, not just for our own employees and students, but for the whole community.
And actually, on the car thing, I might mention for a moment that, you know, even in the rural Ithaca area where automobiles are close to the only mode of transit, as a university, we have a program that's aimed at reducing use of cars on campus by our employees. We're a university that prides ourselves in sustainability, not just of our buildings, but also of the transportation that, you know, our employees use to get to work every day. In New York City, where there's a lot more of a public transportation network, we're, you know, very oriented toward that over private vehicles wherever feasible and possible. You know, there are some people who just have to take a car to work, you know, particularly people who might have some sort of disability, et cetera, but we really try to make sure that where possible, people avail themselves of the most green ways of getting to work.
There is a parking garage on Roosevelt Island called the Motorgate that's right by the bridge. Do you foresee that being used as a parking facility for Cornell as opposed to on-site parking?
We're certainly where Motorgate, my understanding is there is some availability there that's not fully utilized, but this is just one of the issues we're going to look through. We will absolutely need some parking spaces around the campus, but as Dan said, our hope is to really minimize the car traffic.
Do you think you would need as many car spaces as is currently being used by the hospital?
Don't know. So that's all those kind of planning studies that absolutely will be part of what's studied in the next few months.
And if you don't mind me making a suggestion, part of the reason that we're here tonight is to start this dialogue with you and with others in the community. And we're right at the beginning of the process, which is not to duck the questions, is to say that as the process goes on, we hope you'll keep in touch with us and we can talk again. Because these things will start to clarify themselves as Dan and Cathy and others are examining the different options. Some of the questions you asked tonight, we just don't know yet because of the planning. But we want to interact with you, starting now, but not ending now, so that we can continue to do it.
There is the possibility, and even there was the expectation of building an additional quadrant on of the Motorgate parking garage.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that could be used for other purposes other than the university. Would there be interest in Cornell in doing that and in contributing to the funding of building something like that? In many other communities, when a university comes into their community, issues such as improving subway service and making improvements to subway stations are being discussed. Is that something that is feasible from Cornell's point of view?
The only thing we can say right now is that we're at the beginning of the planning process. We're here to listen. We're in what you might call a listening mode to find out what people are thinking. And this is going to be our education, starting tonight, starting with you, starting with the interview. I don't know that we can make any comments on that just because we don't know. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. My experience, having talked to a number of people here on Roosevelt Island, but just starting this discussion, is that transportation in a number of forms has been a long-standing concern, and now we're the newest members of the community, and so it's our concern too.
Ferry service has been a big
That's
issue.
another form of
That's
transportation.
another-
The only one I haven't heard about is airplanes, trains, planes, and
Have you heard about the pedestrian walkway to the Queensboro Bridge?
Yes, I have heard about
You've
that.
heard,
Yes.
so
Yes.
you've heard a lot of
Yes.
it then. How about, how do you intend on working with local Roosevelt Island organizations and, you know, being a good neighbor? we have a lot of different types of people that live on Roosevelt Island. We have a significant senior population. We have a significant disabled population. There are youth of various ages that could be helped with educational training. Is this part of your thinking of how to work with these types of
We've
communities?
actually already started that. It's absolutely, it's not just part of our thinking, it's really a core part of the mission, and I may ask Dan to say a bit about it, but I've already had several meetings with some of those organizational leaders, and we'll have plenty more. I've also had a couple meetings with the principal of the school. One of the things we're firmly committed to is working with the school here on Roosevelt Island in whatever way makes sense to the school system, and it just makes total sense. I mean, we're here on the island, we have this faculty and students here that could really engage with the school and work very closely with them. So there are a number of ways we're going to engage with the community, starting with local organizations and the school system. You want to talk a little bit about the K-12 piece?
Yeah. So I mean, this campus's mission is around technology and commercialization of technology. You know, we're a graduate level research institution bringing academic excellence together with commercial endeavor. But one of the really important pieces in the whole technology sector is, frankly, the lack of people with the right kind of training and talent. Even to go to undergraduate programs in engineering and computing sciences, much less to graduate level campuses. And so one of the things that's another core piece of the mission, in addition to the graduate level research and the technology commercialization, is what we refer to as the educational pipeline, which is students up to and through college. The students getting the educations that they need to come to a campus like this, get this kind of education, and then take the kinds of jobs that right now companies in New York can't fill because they're looking for people with master's level education in these kinds of disciplines. And so a very important piece of this is at the middle school level, at the high school level, and then frankly the early college and community college level, where students often get sort of turned away from the more mathematical and scientific kinds of studies towards other kinds of studies. So we're planning to work, you know, with the New York City public school system and with others, planning to bring researchers and academics in who are focused specifically on the kinds of education that you need earlier in your educational career to prepare yourself to you know, become a citizen of the 21st century and have the kind of technology education for that, and potentially become students on this campus as graduate students later in life.
And I want to keep emphasizing that in this kind of an interview, you know, we clean up and sit and talk to you. It's easy to say things, but if you look back at what these folks have done in Ithaca, in their careers there, they've actually done these things. I know you've done your homework on us, and I hope that our new neighbors on Roosevelt Island will also get online and Google us and see what's happened in the past. A lot of these things that Cathy and Dan are talking about have a pretty proud tradition already in Ithaca. And so they not only have the ideas and the good intentions, they have a context and a backlog of knowing how to do it. Some of these things, if I could say, are aimed at direct education as part of the mission. Some of our are aimed to using these resources, these assets, to sort of help the teachers themselves keep up with science. And for example, some of Kent's faculty in the physical sciences in Ithaca have gotten grants from the National Science Foundation to teach teachers, high school teachers, physics throughout the upstate region. But there's really two big universes to answer your question in a large sense. One are the programs that the leaders at the campus are going to put together. And that's very important, and that's what my colleagues are talking about. It's equally important to remember that people here are going to be more neighbors on Roosevelt Island. A lot of them, as Cathy said, are going to live right here. And if you look at how the people of Cornell are where we are right now in Geneva, New York, in Ithaca, and many places around the world, in Washington, the people themselves, the faculty, staff, the employees, and the students tend to become very involved in the community. So both these things will be operative. The plans the leaders are making and the people themselves are intricately woven into the fabric, and that's the way it's going to be here.
Just following up on that, the Roosevelt Island Youth Program here on Roosevelt Island has a robotics program, where one of our local residents who's very familiar with robots and electronics teaches them how to build robots and they move over the floor. So this sounds as though it's the type of thing that would fit in with with what you've just described.
Absolutely. In fact, just yesterday, we have an annual project fair called BOOM, which stands for Bits on Our Minds. It's a digital technologies fair, and it's, the presenters there largely are undergraduates and our graduate students in Ithaca. But in fact, one of the presentations yesterday was by a group of Ithaca high school students who have a FIRST robotics team, and they were showing off their robot running around. I think that these kinds of technology demonstration fairs, science fairs, even if they're aimed primarily at the students on the campus, given the kinds of relationships with the local community, they bring in students at all levels. BOOM is amazing to watch also. It's not just that the local students participate through some of the exhibits, but you see tons of the local students coming to look at the exhibits. So they're both there as part of the audience, but they're also there as part of the participants, even intermingled with the college students and the graduate students.
As you're thinking about this, Rick, and as we're interacting with each other over months and years to come, if there's ways that we could, add some third dimension, some color to these things by plugging you into things that are happening in Ithaca like BOOM, we're at your service. And also Vice President Bruce, Tommy Bruce, who's over there, who's the VP for University Communications.
Great, thank you.
We can help Rick to get information to you if it's helpful to you for your work.
That would be great. That would be great.
Just let us know what kind of stuff you want to follow.
Or even host you in Ithaca sometime if you want.
Yeah, maybe not in January or February. But
Yeah.
it's basically up to
I
you.
like cold weather, but
We'll come in January then.
okay. How about the issue of employment opportunities, both during the construction phase of the project and when the school is up and running? Any thoughts on, hiring, Roosevelt Island residents and people living nearby to participate in the construction of the project and just work going forward after that?
Go ahead. if you want.
Yeah, so I've actually, absolutely. So we're just putting our hiring strategy together. I've had a number of really helpful discussions already with several organizations focused primarily on hiring low-income individuals. It's our intention to put together a pretty intense training program working with some of these partners to make sure that people are well-equipped to deal with this campus. So as we hire a construction manager on the construction side, that will be a key part of selecting the right firm that takes us as seriously as we do. And then as we start campus operations in 2017, this will be a big part of what we do. It is really having a deliberate strategy on hiring those folks.
Once again, if you have a chance, and you got a lot more to do than write about us, but if you get a chance to look into our history, it's easy to promise things, but past behavior, as they say, is the best predictor of things to come. If you have a chance to look back at how we act as an employer, these sort of things that Cathy is referring to, I think it's fair to say we're famous nationally for this. We were twice named, for example, the best employer in the United States for workers over 50, corporate or higher ed or nonprofit. The best, twice in a row by the AARP, an organization I'm a proud member of for more than a decade. And the reason for that is because of the kind of innovative things that Cathy is talking about and that Cathy and Lance and others have done. So the same kind of thinking, the same basic approach to employment and training, continuing professional development for people, reaching out to different populations, and as Cathy said, very important point, choosing the vendors based in part on their willingness to do it. This is really, it's sort of a cliche, but it's in the DNA of the place to do this. And if you have a chance to, well, once again, Vice President Bruce could plug you into some of this information to see what we've done in the past. It's the same university. It's part of Kent Fox's campus, part of the same organization, and we're going to operate the same way. It's just that it's another footprint for Cornell. So it's going to be more of the same good history of being a good employer and a good neighbor.
You may or may not know about the formation of an organization of Roosevelt Island and nearby organizations into what is being called the Silicon Island Coalition. And the purpose of the coalition is to be able to speak directly with Cornell officials about many of these topics. Are you open to speaking with them and recognizing them as the voice or the official representatives of the community here in Roosevelt Island?
We're very open to speaking with them and a lot of other people. We started this conversation by saying we are just starting this, and it's really important that we listen and we hear. We have a lot of interaction, and so of course we're open to listening and sitting down with them and talking and learning as much as we can about the island and what's going on.
One thing I must say, though, once again, to underscore something Cathy already said, she said talking to them and other people. From my experience of 3.5 decades in higher education, most of it in public institutions, even if we would engage, which we absolutely will, with a representative body, there may be people who don't feel they're represented by that body or have some other reason for wanting to talk with us. And given that we're the land-grant institution and have that same ethos of wanting to interact directly, I think it's predictable to say that it wouldn't be an exclusive communication. I think we'd have to be straightforward about that. So both are true, as Cathy said. Of course, the leaders will interact with them, but we want anybody to feel comfortable coming to us. I give my email, for example, to all the students, all the parents, and all 220,000 alumni. Now, thankfully, they don't all write me at the same time. But the idea of that, somewhat symbolic gesture, is to make it clear that our administration, and everybody is this way in the leadership at Cornell, and these leaders of this campus, want to hear from the people who are affected by the decisions that we make. It doesn't mean that in every case we're going to line up exactly right. It doesn't mean we're not going to have areas where we need to, push and shove a little bit and figure things out. But we're open and honest, and we want to hear from people who are affected by this, which is going to be, broadly distributed across the island. So I think the way Cathy said it is right. I just want to underscore where she said this organization and others.
Yeah. Our intention is in the coming months is to hold a series of discussions with community members on Roosevelt Island, whoever wants to have them, and some open houses where people can stop by and get briefed on where we are with this and ask questions. So all of that will be happening.
I'm sure you're familiar right now with the way Roosevelt Island is governed through a public benefit corporation called the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation, which makes Roosevelt Island a different neighborhood than really any other in New York City, because it's governed by this corporation. There's been some recent controversies in terms of appointments to the board of directors by certain people who are not residents of Roosevelt Island and who were not elected by the people here. There have been rumors that Cornell may have a person, I guess it was really Ms. Dove, because she's now a resident of Roosevelt Island, appointed to the REAC board. Is there any comment on that issue?
No, I mentioned a few weeks ago when I was asked this question that we are interested in engaging all of the residents and doing exactly what we just talked about as far as working with the community. And so community outreach and that engagement is great, but it won't be as a member of the Roosevelt Island Operating Committee Board.
Please help us to get this word out, because we've heard about it a lot.
Yeah.
And you just heard it from the leader's mouth that we're not going to do that.
I can get the word out.
Thank you. That would help.
An issue arose this week regarding Moody's report on the Cornell creditworthiness in regard to not your first stage of development, but I guess your second or third stage development of the campus. Do you have any comment on that Moody's report?
Well, the first Moody's report that came out right after the team won the competition said that they thought winning the bid was credit positive. I'm sure you followed that. And we are second highest category of bond rating for Moody's, and third highest possible from Standard & Poor's. So we're one of the organizations in the world. You're hearing all these, horror stories about whole countries that are downgraded in terms of creditworthiness. We have very, very high creditworthiness. And what Moody's just did a week ago was to move our outlook from negative to stable at the same level of bond rating. As we go out farther in further phases, it'll remain to be seen how much bonding, how much borrowing will occur. And it's 100% conjectural of what that will do to our creditworthiness. What Provost Fuchs has done in managing the university through the recession and balancing the budget and continuing to invest in faculty hiring and so on, is to balance the need to continue forward without borrowing recently. We haven't bonded recently. And so because of his very sort of steady hand on the till, so to speak, I'm very confident, this will be, a long time after my presidency, but I'm very confident that with the kind of principles that he's set up in running the budget of the university, that will balance the need to spend money and eventually borrow money with the asset that can be promised against it, that is the university endowment. And we're fortunate to be one of the schools that has a large endowment, over $5 billion right now. And so I'm very confident going forward that we'll continue to be ranked at the very highest levels of credit worthiness. And I think that Moody's, it's one thing to conjecture about the future, but calling it credit positive from the beginning and then moving our outlook from negative to stable right now, both are signs of their great confidence in the way this budget has been managed, the size of the asset, and the very, very cautious, reasonable way that we've approached the use of debt. And I'm very confident about that. I think you'll see that this is a sort of a reasoned, measured approach to it.
As of now, you're fully funded for the first stage
Yes.
of the campus development?
Yes, because of the generosity of our alum that you read about and covered, and it's wonderful. We have one of the most philanthropic alumni pools of any university in history, and this was, to our great good fortune, a project that ignited the interest of this gentleman in this organization, one of the largest gifts ever to occur in higher education, and it's allowing our leaders to be careful and measured and thoughtful, take their time, and listen to people like you, listen to the people sort of standing behind you, so to speak. And we have that luxury of being able to do that because the first phase is taken. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to be looking for more revenue. And eventually, as the campus ramps up, there's going to be multiple revenue streams. Tuition, there's going to be licensing income from discoveries that are made. There's going to be partnerships of all kinds that will occur. There'll be grants that will be won competitively from the federal government. And we believe a lot more philanthropy in the future. So it's been a sort of a hallmark of Cornell's financial status, and especially under Provost Fuchs's stewardship, that these various different revenue streams have been handled in sort of a careful way, and that's what we anticipate continuing to happen. Right now, though, we have the luxury of being able to plan in a deliberative way because of this gift.
I think there's one step that you still have to accomplish before you can fully take possession of the site, and that's the portion of land which is not controlled by the city of New York, but which is controlled by REOC. Do you have any thoughts on how you're going to go about getting that land from REOC?
Well, as you know, there was a unanimous resolution by the REOC board a month ago in support of this direction. We think it makes a lot of sense. It's basically kind of an orphaned piece of land between what will be the Cornell property and the road. So we'll continue to work with REOC on as we go through the environmental review process and in the hopes to make that happen. But thus far, we've been very gratified that there's support for us doing that. It seems to benefit everybody to take that small strip and include in the larger parcel.
Was that made clear in the RFP that there was a portion of the land that was not controlled by New York City's? What?
Oh, that's a good question.
I can't even remember.
The boundary was clear, and honestly, Rick, I'm trying to remember whether we spent a lot of time focusing on that boundary. But as we have looked at the parcel, it just makes sense. It really is this orphaned little strip that by including it in the parcel, we can be very thoughtful in our landscaping and again on the community access to it versus having this little piece that's controlled by somebody else.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the time you guys spent talking to us, talking to me about this.
You're helping us so much to connect with the community.
If you have any final words you'd like to say, at least for this particular interview?
I would like to just add one thing, this is one of these things you expect me to say, but I mean it quite genuinely. These are leaders that are not only talented, not only have a tremendous track record, but they love this place. It sounds corny, but it's true. They love Roosevelt Island. They chose this as the area to focus the application on for the reasons that Cathy talked about when we first began the interview. And they're very enthusiastic themselves to become part of the Roosevelt Island community. So I hope you'll, I'll give you my card, you can reach me anytime you want, and Vice President Bruce. But also I hope you'll see these people as your neighbors right now, because it's literally true.
Actually, Cathy is literally my neighbor right now.
We are literally neighbors, and I don't know if you're going to post this, but if you do, I'm just so gratified how welcoming people have been. I've been here about a month and a half. This is a special community, and I'm delighted to be here.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks
I
a lot.
appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys in the future.
Yeah,
Will.
You know where to find us. You know where to find us.